thanks very much. Martin comes from the German Center for Neurodegenerative Diseases, and he'll be talking about how to transform AI prototypes.
Yes, now it's right. Thank you very much, and I'm sorry for the inconvenience. So my question we are targeting is, and what I want to illustrate in 3 ongoing projects in our lab, how can we effectively get all these AI tools we are currently trying to do research in, how can we get them in the clinics to effectively make use of them in our clinical decision making? And I'm coming from dementia research, and we have this great problem here, some numbers just from Germany, but they are the same in whole Europe and also developmental countries, that the number of people getting older is getting more and more. And we expect in 20 years maybe the double amount of patients seeking advice in medical doctors and dementia clinics. So that means that every doctor from you needs to see twice as many people as they do now. And the only way we can increase effectiveness is using AI tools wherever possible. But a great caveat of these tools is that you really have to provide explanations and about the rationale, how these tools make their decisions, to have a clinical acceptance and to really make use of these tools. And with that, I would like to start giving an overview of our first project, where we are interested in how can we actually make such AI, like a deep neural network for analyzing brain images, how can we make it useful for clinicians? And one idea is to create a user interface where we can add visual explanations derived from relevance maps, for instance, for convolutional neural networks, and to add textual explanations which summarizes what are the key points the AI detects in these kind of images. And to do that, we recently, or a couple of years ago, published an app which uses convolutional neural networks. You can upload an image, then it evaluates it, gives you the probability of Alzheimer's disease or the likelihood for that particular patient. And then it will visualize the relevance maps and show, here you see it nicely in hippocampus as well as some other noise regions and so on, where it thinks it's most likely to be affected and where is atrophy most present. So that's what we already published. You can read that up and you can try it out on our website as well. And we are now working on getting the textual explanations for that. And it's a kind of, you see, it's a very long process from model tuning, optimization. We invented some new visualization methods to directly see where is atrophy present, and also now extended to frontotemporal dementia and Alzheimer's disease, to have a more difficult task for the AI tools to generate. And finally, we want to generate, on the right side you see it, a final report where the radiologists just upload their DICOM files, and then they can later inspect what are all the findings our AI tools present for a specific subject. So coming from that, we are involved in a second project where we are in a international North European consortia, and we are looking at how can we integrate what are processes within a hospital which are affected by such an AI tool and which we need to consider as a model developer or as a medical doctor to say it's kind of not so easy to just deploy your tool somewhere on the medical computer system at the AI scanner and then it will run. That's not possible, and you really have to include all like this legislation and technical aspects, work processes of medical doctors, and also quality management and change management. And this project is intended to develop guidelines both for kind of prototype systems as well as medical products. So if you are interested to fund a startup or something, we came up with a very first preliminary approach to map all the roles, which you see on the left side. There's like clinical, legal, regulatory, and commercial aspects you need to consider. And then based on the phase of your project, if you are early in development or more on validation, there are different tasks that have to be considered. And the goal is to have a website available with all these details and all the guidelines and checklists we developed to finally support you as researchers with an open collaborative database to figure out how can we actually improve our work processes. So I will provide a link at the end. You don't have to find all these details and copy right now. So we have a third project which then goes, coming from that, where do we actually, if we have such a tool in the clinic, like our dementia assistance tool, how do we use it effectively and or use it responsibly? And we first, what I will present is had expert interviews, also focus groups, which pointed out a lot of detailed points envisioned from medical experts and ethical experts. And the goal now is to also, what we are just starting to do, to use this app with the patients, with the medical doctors. So we look for 10 patients in our lab to actually use it and to see what will be the effect, how do the patients, how do the relatives or caregivers of patients recognize that there's an AI tool showing what parts of the brain are damaged. Will it actually help, or is it just confusing them? That's what we don't know yet, and that's what needs to be explored. So from these kind of interviews, I would give you just some quick overview. So it was, on the one hand, with from psychiatry department looking at depression, and from us, dementia memory clinic, to look at dementia. And I just want to point out the middle one. If the AI tool gives us a probability for a subject to have something, or for a patient to have something, what does it actually mean for the clinical decision making? And here you have it. I don't want to read all of that, but just imagine it states a probability of 88% or maybe 65. That's kind of, 65 is more challenging. How do you translate it into a medical decision as a medical doctor? And how do you actually communicate that? And how to, it's the last sentence, how to actually have the leadership still as a medical doctor to say, that's what the AI tells me, that's what the other types of assessments tell me. How do we all integrate this information into a specific decision for the medical doctors, and how can they responsibly use this AI tool? So for me as a methodologic guy and a tool developer, that tells me, okay, I need to provide confidence intervals, and I have to provide additional information that helps the clinicians to see this and this really can be conclusions I draw out of that information, or that helps me to think, what do I all have to provide for the medical decision making? Second aspect I would like to say is the last point here. If you have an AI tool and it tells, oh, you have Alzheimer's disease, and there are no effects in the image you would assess as a medical doctor, and then whom do you believe, your own decision opinion or the AI tool? And many people talked and said, oh, sometimes people are uncertain, they think they missed something, so they still believe in what the AI tells them just because they think, okay, it might have some superpower, it might have effects or things to consider which I'm not aware of, so it might be right. And that's really kind of problem we have to solve, and where we really have to also educate clinical decision makers, kind of how the tool works, what are known problems, when to believe in it, and also when to report and make it easy to report fails of such systems. So when it's obviously wrong, we need to report that to know what are biases or what are maybe ethical problems, ethnical problems. If you see some minority of subjects where it's always wrong, then you have to report that we as model developers can actually improve our tools and make it more robust and more easier to decide. So with that, I would like to thank you and just briefly summarize. So the relevance mapping tells us where things are going on in the model, what it believes to see, and what it estimates for drawing its conclusion. It also helps us to communicate to the medical doctors. And I would also emphasize that the participatory approach really helps us to find all these caveats, all these challenges of medical decision-making, of processes which medical doctors are used to actually design our tools in such a way that we can really serve the doctors and not just have a tool somewhere which is never being used. And finally, most importantly, the effect of patients and of doctors and their relationship and on clinical decision-making really needs to be assessed and to be evaluated carefully. And also each AI tool needs to be carefully evaluated because some are more mature or have pros and cons. And if you're more interested, feel free to look at the e-poster, which unfortunately was presented on Monday, Tuesday. But I uploaded it so you can read it all up and you can also find all this information there. So I thank you for your attention and all my collaborators and team members to contribute to that work. So thank you very much.
All right, we have a couple minutes for questions. I'll start with one from the app, which is, what do you think about implementing real clinical trials for AI algorithms to assess their clinical impact?
Oh, there was a lot of echo. The clinical impact of AI in clinical
Well, the question is, what do you think about actually implementing clinical trials to assess their impact, kind of quantitatively?
Yeah, that's a good idea. I mean, you saw, okay, first we have to validate, and I mean, our tool was validated, so we trained on ADNI, and then we validated on ABLE and other data sets, Delcode from our own lab, and so that's one step, and once you validated it, and you know it's ready, then of course you can start a multi-center trial, or at least use it as a maybe secondary outcome to see, okay, does it actually help researchers or clinical doctors in what they want to assess?
Cool.
So I think that's a brilliant idea, and at least that has to be done to make sure things work well. I think there's a radiology website from the Netherlands, from Kiki, I forgot her name. They evaluated, or they screened 100 tools for radiology, and only maybe 1/4 of them was actually validated independently in clinical studies. So that's a huge challenge for us.
Cool. All right, we have a question from the audience.
Sure. I'm glad to see that you're really taking this also qualitative approach with the patient participatory type of steps. But I was also curious, when you're taking, say, these tools and algorithms in, say, another country or places using them, do you have any thoughts or caveats about the difference in the demographics or ethnicities, cultures of where yours was tested versus, say, if we take it to somewhere, you know, that doesn't have the same demographic spread as Germany, per se?
Yes, I mean, you are totally right. There are so many also social aspects. I mean, in Germany, we are totally conservative, though they don't even trust any computer. And they have to learn and to get trust, and that also needs time. I see here also the 80+ people use their smartphone just naturally. And I guess that will happen in Germany in 10 years when the now people used to use smartphones will use them. And that's also kind of a challenge for us because we already have to envision what will happen in 5 years, in 10 years, and do the research now to have the results being available when we actually need them. So that's also kind of where participatory research really improves.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's great. And I think it would just be wonderful if people like you could just say, hey, before you take my tool or this thing, make sure this really works in your population, or at least have care. Some people see the miracle tool and just want to use it.
Thank you. Really great points. Thanks, Martin. We're going to have to move on